a branch from his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and fear of the Lord. His delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see, or decide by what his ears hear. But with righteousness he shall judge the poor, and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt around his waist, and faithfulness the belt around his loins. The wolf shall live with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid. The calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put its hand on the adder's den. They will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. On that day the root of Jesse shall stand as a signal to the peoples. The nations shall inquire of him, and his dwelling shall be glorious. This is the word of the Lord.
This is our third week of Advent. Our first week we canceled church because of a lot of snow, and that was a week where our word to focus on was hope. And then last week we had our children's program, and the word to focus on that week was peace. And now this week the word is joy. Next week is love. And I feel like with church being canceled and then children's program, I feel like this is kind of like the beginning of Advent rather than the third week. So I'm a little bit discombobulated. And the sermon today is kind of a general Advent message rather than focusing on just the joy. And I do gotta warn you, this is my message that I was going to give 2 weeks ago. And with communion today, it might be a little longer. So if you're looking at the clock and going, Pastor, it's okay, I know. Right? So, Advent is a time before Christmas where we settle our souls. And we enter into a season of waiting. And while we wait, we reflect on these 4 little words that we went over just a little bit ago. And they're words that mean a lot to humanity. The words of hope, peace, love, joy. And we think of these words during this season because I really believe that it's our goal, our human goal, to have all these elements in our lives. We hope for the future. We want peace for the world. We want to have a joy-filled life and live to the fullest. And we want to love one another. And I think this general human goal applies for everyone. This goal has been being pursued for thousands upon thousands of years. We have a great example of it today in our scripture reading. Isaiah is a book of the Bible we hear from often this time of year. And it has many prophetic references to the Messiah, the Christ, being born. Isaiah has always been a little mysterious to me. It's like this mystical voice that kind of whispers in your ear. And you almost picture somebody kind of like this. He has a crystal ball and a wizard hat. That's what I picture in my head, because you hear these whispers in your ear, such as, "A shoot shall come out from the stump of Jesse," or "For unto us a child is born," or "The wolf shall lie down with the lamb." It's so cryptic sometimes, isn't it? What we do know about this book of Isaiah, this Isaiah son, I hope I pronounced this right, it was his relative's name, Amaz. Am I pronouncing that right? Does anybody? Amaz?
Sounds good.
Sounds good? A-M-O-Z, Amaz. And who was this Isaiah, the son of Amaz? What was he writing about? Did he wear a wizard hat? The answer to the last question about the wizard hat is no. He didn't wear a wizard hat. Pretty sure of that. I don't believe he carried around a crystal ball either. But the book of Isaiah is complicated. When you first look at the way that it is written, you would think that the genre of that is poetry, but it isn't. It is considered prophetic literature, sort of. And its content is not always easy to read. It abruptly changes. It abruptly changes in subject and style and genre and mood. It changes constantly. Some scholars believe that there is not just one author, but several authors to this book. At least 3 who have added and edited the content. And that might explain some of the craziness that is going on inside of this book. But there is continuity to it. There is a story embedded in this book. A story the author or authors desperately wanted to communicate to their readers, to their audience. Now I want to start with some things that we do know about Isaiah, the son of Amaz. Not Amaz, Azah. I gotta go back, I think I spelled it wrong. Amaz. For Christmas, you can get me a Bible dictionary with pronunciations. How's that? We do know that Isaiah lived in the mid to early 700 BC. 700 years before Christ. He had access to kings, but Isaiah's advice was not always respected or listened to. We know that through reading his book that he was married and that he had kids. We know that he had disciples around him who have collected and maybe written down some of his words. And we think that sometimes that when Jesus walked this earth and he had the 12 disciples around him, we think, oh, that was a new thing. That was something that Jesus was doing and he was the only one doing it, but that's not the truth. That having disciples around you and mentoring people as students in this way has been around for hundreds of years. And Isaiah had disciples around him. Isaiah was considered a prophet. Now a prophet in ancient times was not somebody like we saw on the screen, wasn't a crystal ball with a wizard hat pretending, predicting the future. He wasn't like a Merlin type of guy. Instead, a prophet was one who saw what was happening around them, had insight and wisdom, and could see the consequences of what was going to happen. And there were 2 types of prophecy. There was the foretelling, the future, and then there was the forthtelling, what was happening in the present. And the book of Isaiah includes both types of prophecy. And last but not least, Isaiah lived his life under Assyrian threat to the northern kingdom. And that's where most of our story lies, is knowing that Isaiah and the people that Isaiah was trying to warn, the Israelites, that they lived under an Assyrian threat. And we're going to stop there because we're going to tell a story. Once upon a time, in a land of Israel, lived a great king named David. And it's important that you remember that. David is known, even today, as one of the greatest kings Israel ever had. With David on the throne, Israel was at the top of their game. After David died, his son Solomon became king, and he ruled pretty well too. Stories have been told of King Solomon and his wisdom, which brought more wealth and more prestige to Israel. At the end of Solomon's death, he did get a little off track, and things began to turn sour during that time. The kingdom of Israel split in two. You had a northern kingdom called Israel and a southern kingdom called Judah. Instead of one king, there were two. And as time went on and Judah and Israel had the succession of kings, most of them, as scripture describes, did evil in the eyes of the Lord. And they didn't go into much detail after that. They did not fear the Lord. They forgot about the God of Abraham, the God of Jacob, the God of Isaac. They forgot about the God who brought them out of the land of Egypt and paved the way, as their story tells us, to create a home in the promised land. They forgot how to love God. And as a result, they forgot how to love people and love one another. So they lived in two separate tribes, Israel and Judah, fighting with each other rather than fighting for each other, and making them vulnerable to enemies who wanted to take over their land. Once upon a time, there was a powerful nation called Assyria who wanted the land of the northern kingdom of Israel. In 1701 BC, this empire besieged and laid siege to the northern kingdom over a period of 20 years through 4 different kings. And attacking and laying siege on something is different. When you attack, you attack. When you lay siege, you block roads, you block supplies, you slowly wear somebody down. And that's what they did to Israel. 20 years. And it was during this time that Isaiah's voice was heard, along with other prophets. He wasn't the only one saying these things. Hosea, who is recorded in the Old Testament. Micah is recorded there, among other prophets who spoke of both the unfaithfulness of Israel, but also of Judah. All of the prophets, including Isaiah, had similar messages. And they usually had 3 points to it, like any good sermon, they had 3 points. Their first is that Israel and Judah had not been loving God as they have been taught. And therefore they forgot how to love people. They forgot about God, and they forgot how to love people. That was their first message. The second message was that there are consequences when you don't love God and when you don't love people. And it's coming. And if you don't turn from your ways, if you don't begin loving God and treating people well, then there's going to be destruction. There's going to be negative consequences. And the third message is that even in all of this, God will remain faithful to us. Even though through the hard times, God will rescue us by sending a Messiah, a King, to help us put our lives back together again. And it will be somebody like David. Do you think the northern kingdom listened? No, they didn't. In 722 BC, the northern kingdom of Israel fell as the Israelites were so slowly besieged in the tribe lands, and they slowly began exporting them and relocating them to Assyrian territory. They disappeared. And the southern kingdom, Judah, they didn't listen either. And they fell in 586 BC. but not by Assyria, it was by Babylon. They came and they took them captive, destroyed the temple, and they were brought into exile in Babylon. And now, they're living in a foreign land. And they're waiting. They're waiting to see if Isaiah was right. And all the other prophets, were they right? Is God going to remain faithful? A shoot shall come out from the stump of Jesse, is David's father. A branch shall grow out of Jesse's roots. A connection to David. The image of a family tree, a ruler will come out from it who will be wise and understanding. Someone who is good counsel and is mighty. One who is knowledgeable about God and fears the Lord instead of ignoring God and doing evil in his eyes. Someone different than the other kings. Someone who will protect the poor and the meek of the earth. Someone who will stand up for injustice. And there will be peace in the land. The next part of the scripture, all these metaphors of animals, the wolves and the lambs and the leopards and the goats and the cows and the bears, creation will be at peace. Some scholars believe that the metaphors of the animals are representative of nations. That these animals represent nations. And in the middle of it, it says, and a little child shall lead them. They will not hurt or destroy on my holy mountain. This holy mountain. For those who were here when we were going through the Psalms, remember what the holy mountain was? I lift up my eyes to the hills. Where does my help come from? This holy mountain, Zion. It's referring to where God dwells, where God lives. On that day, the root of Jesse shall stand as a signal to the people. The nation shall inquire of him, and his dwelling shall be glorious. But for now, Israel waits in exile, in darkness, in defeat. Maybe they were hopeless. They couldn't find joy. They didn't have much peace. And they were waiting to see if maybe God was faithful enough to continue to love them. And they wait for a new king to rescue them. We hear these echoes of ancient words written in Scripture hundreds of years ago, and we think, this has nothing to do with me. And for some of us, maybe it doesn't. But for some of us, we can connect with these words, with these ancient words spoken so many years ago. Maybe we're sitting here today and we feel like we're in exile. Maybe there are some of us who are considered maybe outsiders of our family. Maybe there was a fight or a disagreement over Thanksgiving, and maybe we just drifted away from them. They don't understand us. They don't want us around. And so we wait. And maybe there are some here who feel attacked or judged. You have a different opinion. You have different beliefs. Nobody understands you. You don't fit the norm of what those around us think or believe. And maybe you're afraid to share what you really feel. And so you wait. There are many ways that we can be made to feel like we are in exile. Lost, broken, hopeless. But in this season of Advent and in the waiting, there is hope. there can be peace. There can be joy. And you can feel loved in the waiting. You know, we light small candles here to remind us that God has not forgotten about us. And in our pain and in our loneliness, God hears us. And God sees us. And God chooses to act. And what is God's action? He sends Christ. God sends Christ to give hope to a hopeless world. God sends Christ to give peace to tyranny. God sends Christ to give joy to those who need to see past their pain. God sends Christ to give love to those who feel unlovable. My friends at Union, as we reflect upon this Advent season, it's okay to sit and wait. It's okay to sit and be in darkness for a little while. It is the season of waiting. And we must remember that God does not forget about us. That there is hope. That there is peace. That there is joy. And that there is love that comes from God. May the God of peace, the God of love, the God of joy, and the God of hope remind you as we go through this season that He has not forgotten about us. Amen.
Amen.